Mark your calendars now for February 17th to the 19th, 2026. Because if you miss this, you'll be playing catch up all year. This is the future unbound. And the most important higher ed marketing and enrollment management conference of 2026. Insights EDU is taking over Fort Lauderdale, where Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top institutions nationwide will pull back the curtain on what's next. Are you ready to adapt or be left behind? Insights EDU 2026 is where leaders become game changers. Register now at insightsedu.com. That's insightsedu.com. Early bird pricing ends December 15th, 2025. Support the EdUp experience for just $5.99 a month and lock in that rate for life. You'll get ad-free early access to episodes. But hurry, price goes up after December 31st, 2025. Visit edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and click support the show.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you on another fantastic and amazing episode of the EdUp Experience podcast. Done over 1,100 of these and continue to do them. And no joke, and I tell this story and people go, yeah, right, Joe, you don't know what are you saying? No, truly, I am booked out 3 months in advance, Monday through Friday, from 12 to 1 Central Standard Time. That's how often I record. That's how often Elvin Freitas, shout out to the co-founder of the EdUp Experience podcast, how often he books these podcast episodes, and he calls me and goes, man, just the president of this university just wants to be interviewed. Will you do it? What am I supposed to say? No, of course I want to say yes. So it just continues on and will forever. We even had a conversation recently. And do you think that at some day we would just stop podcasting and neither of us could say yes to that? Because it's like, well, we have to do it for always. We book out 3 months in advance. But that gives you, the audience member, because only one person listens to the podcast, so I said member. I meant members. Incredible, timely insights over time about what's happening in higher education, what's top of mind for college and university presidents and other administrators. We were having this top of mind conversation before we hit the record button here about growth and revenue and maybe sustainability on the minds of many right now as we see cuts happening across the industry, but there's so many good things happening too. And we're glad to have a conversation about what's good from time to time. And somebody that's going to be along for the ride to help me do that is my guest co-host. You've heard his name before. You'll hear it again. He's Brent Ramsey. He is CEO at Education Dynamics. Brent, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well, Joe. I'm happy to be here, but more excited to chat with Eric.
Oh, you did it. You did it, Brent. The first time you didn't reveal the name of the guest.
Oh, I did it. Right.
And I commended you on a podcast for not revealing the name of the guest in the intro. Yes. And then here we are again.
I'm normalized now. How about that?
Yes, that's right. You are.
Surprise.
But that's all right. We're going to have an incredible conversation with our guest today. Again, this conversation of innovation happening on our canvases and campuses is happening all over higher education. And we want to bring people to the microphone to tell their story about what's happening in their part of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Eric Turner is the president at Lasell University, and he's your guest on the EdUp Experience today. Eric, how are you?
I'm just fine, Joe. I'm glad to be here. Thanks to you and to Brent, and looking forward to talking to you. And by the way, I congratulate you on your milestone of podcasts. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, thank you very much. In fact, since you opened the door for me as a great third co-host here, Eric, I want to say that we did pull off the first ever higher education podcasting conference this past July. We had 130 people attend. The first ever higher ed podcasting conference from 100 institutions, if you could believe it.
That's
and
great.
What was crazy is the number of faculty that came that teach podcasting at a university or college or in a school of journalism. And you just go, wow, they're just uncovered rocks that we have in our industry. And that's not a good segue into telling us about Lasell University, but we want you to use this opportunity to talk about your university where you are, who do you serve, how do you serve them, and why do we need to hear more about Lasell?
Sure. Well, Lasell University, it's located just outside of Boston in Newton, Massachusetts. We've got about 1,200 undergrad students. We've got about 500 or 600 grad students. Most of those grad students, by the way, are online and learning remote. Our undergrad campus, about 80% of our folks live on campus, and the balance commute. We are a 175-year-old institution, or at least we will be next year. And we've operated continuously all that time, founded in 1851. We were founded as a seminary for women. The seminary is kind of the old use of the word, which was a private institution for young women. And we were founded by a Williams College chemistry professor, Edward Lasell. And he had this idea to train young women in the classical disciplines, as well as to give them practical skills of the day to prepare them for the real world. So our basis in experiential learning and education goes all the way back to our founding. And so we still offer that. We're now a university. We've grown over time to a junior college, a university, a grad program. We've even got a senior living community adjacent to our campus, or part of our campus. And we now offer all sorts of programs in things like fashion, education, business, psychology, forensic science, so on and so forth. So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
I like nutshells.
Amazing.
One thing that I have to ask you right away, I heard you say senior living community on campus. And I'm thinking, is this, I have to ask, is this building repurposing that you've done? Is that, or is it a community that happens to be on the campus that's unrelated?
No, it is a community that we conceived of and designed and opened back in 2000. We had some open land. We felt we were never going to use it for dormitories, and we thought about what the highest and best use was for that land. And we decided to locate a senior community. It's a continuing care retirement community. That means that once you come in, you can come in as young as 65. But once you come in, you can be there until the grave. It has assisted living, an assisted living component. It has a nursing home and a lot of other amenities. Now, it is unique, and unique is an overused word these days, but it is unique in this sense. It has a 450-hour annual education requirement for each resident. 450 hours is about how much time an undergraduate spends in class each year. So each resident at Lasell Village can take classes at the university. They can take classes at Lasell Village. And there are other ways to get credit for education. For instance, a number of our residents still work. So to the extent that they take professional development courses in their discipline, those can count toward that requirement.
We were talking about creativity, Brent. That was right before, right? That's pretty creative.
I find that fascinating because I think you're essentially challenging the definition of who needs to access education and incorporating it into a way of life. And Eric, I think one of the interesting things about Lasell is you guys have always been known as a hands-on institution, a level of practicality, so to speak. And to me, this sort of embodies that element. And I was just wondering, Eric, you described the genesis of it being, yes, it's an area that's not going to be used, but that 450-hour requirement is just mind-blowing to me, because I'd love to unpack that with you and say, when folks show up on campus from that community, how do they see the educational process? And then how is it woven together with all the other students? And are they taking classes with your traditional students as well?
Well, yeah, there are a few questions there. Let me see if I can get them. First of all, all of the residents certainly know about the requirement when they're considering Lasell Village. And I can tell you, I think you could say 100% of them come because of the education requirement. It is
Yeah.
something that they seek out.
Mhm.
And I think Lasell Village is very much the essence of the fact that if you stay active, both physically and mentally, you tend to live longer. And
Mhm.
I think all of our residents have bought into that and are looking for that. In terms of how it plays out, um, initially, 25 years ago when it opened, I think most of the residents actually took classes at the university. As you might imagine, the average age, by the way, of LaSalle Village is about 81 years old. So
Mhm.
as you can imagine, taking a class 3 times a week for 15 weeks a year, and you're doing that multiple times, that actually can be a bit exhausting for somebody in their 80s or 90s. And so, what has evolved over time is that while residents do still take classes at the university, we actually prepare classes in kind of smaller chunks for
Mhm.
the residents because these are active people. They're still visiting children and grandchildren, they're still traveling, they're still doing a lot of different things. So, if you're taking classes in 3, 4, and 5 week chunks, that fits their lifestyle a
Mhm.
lot better than a 15-week semester. So
Nailed it.
that's what has happened now, and it's amazing though when you see in a classroom of undergraduates 2 or 3 seniors in that classroom. Oftentimes, they've lived the experience that is being taught in the class, and so it's just an interesting twist on education. I'd say the other aspect of this is just this whole idea of intergenerational learning, this idea that number one, of lifelong learning, actually, is what I meant to say. This idea that, as beings, as creatures on this planet, we have the ability to learn through our
Mhm.
entire existence. And given that we have minds and spirits and the like, that's
Mhm.
exactly what we should be doing. So, learning throughout the life process is extremely important, and this is actually the manifestation of that idea.
E- Eric, have you shared this nationally? I feel like as we look at the demographics of our nation, so for example, aging populations in a large swath of our nation, and especially an aging population that's more in tune to exactly what you said, which is keeping a sharp mind and that curiosity and learning sort of built into generations. Do you believe that this is a model that would work at other institutions or other entities that would seek to blend together what we think of as the product of education, which fills in either at the beginning of someone's adult life or at a pivot point in their career. But now you're showing where it fills in and adds to something, frankly, much deeper than the transactional benefits that you get from the journey of education.
Yes, I think that you're right. First of all, there are other institutions that are doing this. We get a load of visitors who come through to look at our model, but there are a lot of colleges and universities who are looking at this and who are building communities. They're not doing them necessarily right on the LaSalle Village model, but they're doing things that have interactions between seniors and folks on campus. The other thing that's happening, of course, is the baby boomers are aging,
Mhm.
and there is a huge market and beginning to be a huge demand for this type of thing. Going back to your earlier question, let me just go back to one other thing. When you talk about how this works for us on campus, it's not just the educational aspect to this. Because LaSalle Village residents are right on campus, there's all sorts of interaction and collaboration between the seniors and undergraduates, as well as we have a preschool on our campus also. So there's a lot of things going on. For instance, with our undergraduates at LaSalle Village, they hold a senior prom. Think about that, senior in kind of both definitions of the word. They do an intergenerational talent show. They've done intergenerational trivia hours, trivia nights, that sort of thing. LaSalle Village residents have provided career advice and interviewing for undergraduates and the like. So there's a lot of interaction that takes place within the Lasell community between these two sub-communities of seniors and undergrads, or with our preschool where we have an intergenerational garden where every spring the seniors, the undergraduates, and these 2-year-old to 5-year-olds, if you will, are planting and watching this garden grow. And I'll tell you one little vignette. It's beautiful to see them plant these gardens. Then, of course, the garden is right next to one of our child study centers, child education centers. And so every week you can see the youngsters come out to see the growth in the plants. And the cutest thing, at least what to me was the cutest thing, was to watch some of these youngsters who couldn't figure out why the tomatoes weren't red. Why were they small and still green or small and yellow? And they just couldn't figure out tomatoes are supposed to be big and red. And to see them week by week go and watch that progression is pretty amazing when you talk about learning.
I find that so soulful, actually, when you think about the generational mingling. Is much of it, Eric, does it happen organically as well, between the generations? Because I can see us learning from each other as, we go through different phases of life, that probably adds a unique element to campus culture.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly organic between undergrads and grads and seniors at the village. It has to be a little more, formally executed with the children. So, it's things like the intergenerational garden. It's things like myself, frankly, and village residents and other administrators and faculty going to read, with the young folks. The young folks do a Halloween parade in their costumes around different parts of campus. So there are a lot of different ways it interacts, but most of it is organic, to be quite honest.
And for your, call it your traditional students that would consider Lasell on the way in, how much do you talk about this?
We talk about it a lot, but to be honest, most of the undergraduates aren't really thinking about
Correct.
LaSalle Village. They know it's there.
Right,
They
right.
might walk through it on the way to the subway station or whatnot. However, LaSalle Village is I think our biggest employer of
Mm,
students on campus because our students work down in the dining hall at
mm,
LaSalle Village, and there's a lot of interaction there. And as a matter of fact, I think those students who work in the dining hall feel like they have 220 some odd grandparents because the village residents are always asking them about how they're doing, how's their job, how's class going, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a wonderful interaction.
yeah.
But yeah, for most of the undergraduates, they know it's there, but it's a little more ephemeral, I
But,
guess.
but but I imagine within their first or second semester, then you almost you can't really understand it. You have to feel it.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
that
right.
makes sense. That makes sense.
Eric, you just to shift a little bit as we talk about higher ed and LaSalle, from a certain standpoint, depending on who's looking, LaSalle is in the group of institutions that some would say are at risk, depending on their models, right?
Hmm.
Institutions from zero, although those ones at zero probably didn't make it. Institutions that have small enrollment all the way to about 5,000. And then you're seeing this at different types of institutions. Big ones make cuts because of lack of funding and so on. Is this something that's on your mind? And if so, which I'm sure it is, how do you think about sustainability, variation of your revenue sources, and creating a sustainable LaSalle University for the future?
I think about sustainability actually in a very broad sense. And what that means for us is we are an institution of higher education in a society that values education. And we may not always call it education. We may call it training. Uh, we may call it all sorts of things. But in essence, it's education. So while we may have a demographic that is somewhat declining of traditional degree-seeking students, there are almost 50 million Americans who have a high school diploma and either no or some college.
Mhm.
And when you look at what's going on in our society today, when you look at the increasingly rapid change of that's taking place in industry, if you will, if you look at certainly the increasing amount of global competition, and if you look at how technology continues to evolve, those factors are putting those 50 million Americans at risk in terms of them being able to feed their families. So they all have to, just like, frankly, people with degrees have to do, they've got to retrain, retool, re-educate, whatever you want to call it, in order to remain competitive in this incredibly dynamic economic environment. Well, who better to help do that than institutions of higher education? Not only do we teach teachers. In theory, we know how to teach. So it's important for us to play in that market. And I think what you found is there are a lot of businesses that have stuck their toes in the water about doing education and doing education themselves. And there's some that have done extremely good job with that. If you look at places like IBM and what they've done. But what most of business has come to know is that, first of all, providing education is hard. It's harder than they thought, and it's also more expensive to do it right than most businesses have thought. So, what better segment of the society to offer these kind of services to educate our people than higher education? And we have to evolve in a way beyond our traditional delivery of education to be able to meet that huge demand that's out there. And you see that with a lot of institutions. You see that with a lot of startups who've done very well. But I think traditional institutions have to do a lot better job of that. So that's where I see, our sustainability coming from. And, we're doing things in what we call workforce development to help. I can explain that or go into that a little more, but I don't want to dominate. I've already answered the question a pretty lengthy way. So,
Well, let me ask Brent. Let me bring you into this in a specific way, if you don't mind. I know education dynamics so well, and the concept of the modern learner, which I believe is perfect for our time. And education dynamics as an organization has done a lot of work around defining the modern learner. Who is this person? And it's everyone. It's just that we all want it our way. I can't remember what fast food chain you want it your way, but we all do want it our way. And I give examples of this. Last night, I'm watching and I've brought this up so many times, but I'm watching Netflix with my wife, and our patience level as humans is so it's like eviscerated, right? So we're watching this show, and I think the intro is 40 seconds because I measure the intro times, which, by the way, when you watch a show on Netflix, it used to be a 2-minute intro. And because everybody skips it, they've made the intros a lot tighter. But even with that 40 seconds, my wife is tapping me going, skip the intro. And she asked me 4 or 5 times. I can't even get the remote fast enough sometimes before the intro's skipped. But that's what she wants to do. I want to watch the introduction sometimes. We all want it a different way, Brent. And that's the whole concept of the modern learner. And how does that relate to this conversation we're having?
If you think you can coast into 2026, think again. Insights EDU is coming February 17th to the 19th, 2026, and it's taking over Fort Lauderdale for a beachfront experience. It's the event that will flip your marketing and enrollment strategy on its head. 3 days, over 65 expert speakers, and over 40 sessions. Zero fluff. Just powerhouse strategies from the most anticipated platforms like Google, Reddit, Meta, MIQ Digital, and the most forward-thinking schools in the nation. You'll get the real wins, the bold ideas, and the hands-on tactics to grow programs, drive engagement, and create the student experience today's modern learner demands. The question is, are you ready to lead or will you get left behind? Mark your calendar, bring your team, and secure your spot at insightsedu.com. That's insightsedu.com. Early bird pricing ends December 15, 2025. See you in Fort Lauderdale. The EdUp experience has delivered over 1,000 episodes with higher ed leaders from around the world. Now you can support the show for just $5.99 a month and lock in that rate for life when you join before December 31st, 2025. You'll enjoy ad-free early access to episodes. Go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com. Click support the show and secure your lifetime rate today.
I think Eric gets it. And it's not often you hear a president say, look, we understand and we accept the demographics of the area in which we operate. We think about sustainability by looking at an addressable market that is available. And I think, Eric, you hit the nail on the head. This is the defining moment for higher education, in my view, of our times. We're going to see massive technological shifts that require training. And I like something you said a few minutes ago. You may not call it education. You may call it training. You may not call it a degree. You may call it something else. You may not. At the end of the day, people are just focused on how do they remain relevant in a changing, fast-paced economy. So at Eddy, a couple of years ago, we saw this trend happening as we become in the United States an aging population with a variety of experiences. That 50 million, some college, no degree. That population will be challenged in the future in terms of where they find their career. And as you were talking, I think about the 3 C's that we think about. Here at Eddy, we think of the modern learner as having 3 anchor C's to them. Their journey in education involves consideration of cost, number 1. Number 2, convenience. Is it going to fit my life, fit my model? I may have to work and go to school and all that good stuff. And finally, career. Is this going to enable me to step up in the field I'm in, or maybe step into a new field? And so many times when we talk to institutions, we do talk about this modern learner. Believe it or not, you got more folks taking an undergrad program online in 2025 than you have on ground. I think for the first time ever. So the shift has sort of silently happened, but I believe the macro forces will now require institutions, Eric, to think exactly the way you are. And I'm wondering, as you think beyond, call it what you provide today in the product of education, do you see Lasell one day saying, hey, whether it's workforce development or others, sort of disaggregating that traditional degree thinking into other credentials?
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. And I think for us, there's been an evolution and it continues. We started our graduate program in 2002, and we started it, we very quickly put it online and made it a remote program because it targeted and attracted working adults who were looking to either move into another area or pivot within their own work area. And so this idea of having an asynchronous online program worked very well for that marketplace, and it's grown significantly since then. You look at our workforce development efforts, one of the things we're doing is we're teaming up with area hospitals where we're training surgical technologists. Surgical technologists are the folks in hospitals who maintain operating rooms. And so we have hospitals sending us employees to go through what initially was a 1-year certificate program. The accreditor has now made it an associate's degree program. But they send us employees, we train them in the program, and they come out and take the test and become surgical technologists and increase their compensation, by 20-25% in that move, all in the course of, a year and a half, depending on which of those they get. So, we're doing that with 17 hospitals. The hospitals are asking us if we can do that for other positions and other roles. And we're saying, of course we can. That model works. So the idea, and by the way, that's not always going to be, depending on the position, it's not going to always be an associate's degree or a certificate. It might be one class. It might be two courses of some sort. So, the idea that it has to be a traditional diploma, degree, certificate, that's out the window.
Yeah.
We have to train people with what they need, and people are looking for what they need. And you talk about you got to go get a 4-year degree to do that. They're gone. They're talking to somebody else. So that's an extremely important part of this, and I think how we and others will meet that demand.
Yeah, good point. And then when you factor in things like workforce Pell that's coming on down the road, you start thinking about, okay, if the funding mechanisms are in there, because prior to that, it may not have facilitated that career journey or maybe that short program that allowed someone to upskill. But I think we're in for some exciting times as folks think like yourself about, hey, you know what, if we can take the stack and capabilities that we have here at Lasell and not necessarily always put a bow on it, the 4-year degree. How can we change lives? How can we impact lives by using whether it's courses, diplomas, certificates, whatever it may be?
That's right.
I think.
Brent, the other aspect of this is a lot of this also is about pathways for
Hmm.
for students. Massachusetts and a lot of other states are throwing a lot of money at early college and dual enrollment for high schoolers. So, this idea that you can graduate from high school with as many as 30 credits of,
Hmm.
30 college credits,
Yeah.
just opens so many different paths, because it means you can continue and get a bachelor's or an associate's degree. You can take those credits and go out and work. There are a lot of states, again, a lot of institutions that are working on 3-year degrees. And
Yep.
then, of course, a bunch of colleges and universities and other entities are offering all sorts of certificates and badges and other credentials, that are necessary. So this explosion of methods of delivery, this explosion of types of degrees, types of learning that's available, and this explosion, if you will, of where it occurs along the lifeline,
Hmm.
is all exciting, and it's all really it should work for the benefit of all learners and for society. So
Eric, I think many times people think you sacrifice experiential learning and hands-on learning when you do it online or you do it some other way. Clearly you don't believe that. And Lasell has sort of, stayed true to its tradition of how it educates its students. And it's picked modality that offers choice and enables growth. Um, was there any difficulty when you first started taking programs online to make that happen, or did it come more naturally because of the culture that you had on campus?
I'd say if this could be the case, there's a little of both. I mean, you would find some resistance certainly to going remote and being able to do things online, but the culture, I think, is what allowed us to do these things in a way that does remain true to learning by doing, and the whole experiential aspect of this. So there are a number of ways to incorporate experiential learning in remote learning, and I think we've played with a lot of those over time and found success in some, and failure in others, and have sort of moved on. But yeah, I do think it has been helpful to us to have had so much experience in the experiential space.
Eric, you have so much experience, and and we were talking earlier, your path to presidency was a little bit different than others. I think that's something to raise because you have such a different lens on the position maybe than somebody else who sort of came up through the ranks and that's all they knew. You got to see things from a different perspective. Do you mind telling us the story about how you tripped and fell and did a somersault into a college presidency?
Sure. It's yeah, I guess it's a little different than most in academia. My career has been in business. I studied economics in college, and I have an MBA. And so I cut my teeth in sales and marketing, actually with IBM, and moved into finance after I got my MBA. So I've spent some time on Wall Street as an investment banker, and have worked in commercial banking and a number of different things, and have been out on my own. So in that career, I did volunteer work, primarily board work, and one of the boards on which I sat, beginning about 34 years ago, actually, was the Lasell, then the Lasell College Board of Trustees. And so I've been a trustee for a number of years, multiple terms. I was treasurer of our board. I chaired our board. I chaired the presidential search committee that found my predecessor, as a matter of fact. So a number of years there. I actually spent a little time also on LaSalle Village's board of trustees. So about 8 years ago, I did come aboard as an employee of LaSalle University, a vice president initially, and then became provost, and then became president 2 years ago. So I'm in my third year, and that business background and perspective has proven, I think, to be very helpful to me in this role. There are a lot of similarities between universities and businesses. There are a lot of the functions are the same: human resources, information technology, finance, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, the bottom line challenge is still the same, which is to try to make sure that your costs don't exceed your revenues. So that's important in any organization, and has been helpful, and has again provided kind of a unique way to as you say, Joe, to fall into this.
Your sales and marketing background is really an interesting piece to this, because it is, I don't want to say it's atypical, but sales and marketing, those actual words, sales, I know sometimes we struggle as academics and administrators in higher ed, and I know many who can't even get that word out the way it needs to be said, because we have a product in higher education. It's a program. We are trying to match this program to a buyer, a student who's going to buy this program essentially, and we have to provide a service of it. But there is a transaction, and we do collect revenue from it, and there is a margin, and there's all these other words that you got to sometimes not say in a meeting with faculty and so on. But the baseline is revenue and expense. When you have one more than the other, the revenue part, you're doing okay. And if you're upside down, no matter what you do, no matter what you invest in, you can't cut your way to growth. And that's been, you've got to pick the right things to invest in so that you can grow, and you can't just keep cutting and cutting and cutting, right? That baseline, I think the MBA in business and economics is important, because when you let the dust settle in this industry, there is a balance sheet, and it's got one number bigger than the other. And it's just about how you get it there, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. And I do believe that within the constraints, let's say, of revenue and cost, and trying to be able to run an organization effectively and sustainably, there clearly is room for the fundamental aspect of what a college and university is supposed to be doing, and that is providing, even the traditional education and the like. I think what has happened so many times over the course of decades and maybe even centuries is that either there was a control, if you will, over who got to go to college or university, and that created almost sort of an artificial market, an artificial artifice, if you will. Whereas we're in a period now where you've got sort of a decline in the number of folks who are seeking the education, and it doesn't mean we have to throw liberal arts out the window. It doesn't mean we can't teach traditional subjects and follow traditional disciplines. It just means there may be more constraints over how we structure ourselves in order to do it. But I think the baby very much remains as the bathwater gets drained a little bit, and we've got to figure out the most efficient ways to maintain what we've done traditionally, as well as do all those things we've talked about before, is figure out all these new and different ways to provide for learners who aren't traditional learners.
Yeah, Eric, I think the creativity that we've been talking about will define sustainability for so many institutions moving into the future. Back to what you and Joe were talking about in terms of revenue stream, I think diversified revenue streams from creative thinking and finding the pockets and markets or programs and populations that bring it to the institution becomes key. One of the things we've seen on the research is that there seems to be a growing intersection between what that traditional student wants and expects from their higher education journey and call it the adult and online student. And in many cases, we would normally put them in separate buckets. We treat them very differently for valid reasons and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, they still want a certain amount of convenience. It may mean something a little bit different to the undergrad versus grad. And I'm wondering, like, whether you see these aspects as I described them sort of reveal itself on at Lasell. They're both worried about cost the same way, and they both want to know what's going to happen at the end of my journey in terms of job income and all that good stuff. So, but for the first time last year, our research on these learners sort of forced us to coin it the modern learner because it was no longer a report on a traditional population, a report on an online student, a report on the adult learner. We started seeing that they cared about the same thing. They may express it slightly differently, but they're all in it for a similar outcome. And if you can go shorter, cheaper success, everyone would take that recipe all day, every day. And I'm just wondering, as you think about again the evolution of Lasell into the future, it sounds like you've started to put that thought process in place, and you really don't always think about the sort of islands of students. But have you started to see that with your undergrad population, with your online populations?
Yeah, I would say we've seen it for some time, and that's probably just the nature of the type of student that we attract, and the nature of our emphasis on we call our experiential philosophy, we call it connected learning. And that's something that, at least under that term, we've been doing for easily 30, 40 years at this point. And so, for us, we've seen that intersection for a while. And it doesn't mean that, we've thrown out, general education and the core curriculum and the like. But it does mean that what we have done is tried to make sure that we offer our students a career-ready
Mm.
experience. And so, every student at Lasell every student has graduated with at least one internship, again, for decades now. So I know that's very common now, but it's something that we've been doing for some time. Back when institutions thought that was a crazy thing for us to be doing, there are institutions who are doing it now and the like. And so it's just the reality is that that English major, that history major, those other humanities majors, still need to get a job
Hmm.
when they come out, and not all of them want to teach. So this idea that you have to prepare them for the real world. You have to prepare them to be collaborative. You have to prepare them to know how to present, both written and orally. All of those things that are important to employers. these students still need, want, and should have. So I think your point is quite valid, and if anything, our recent history has borne it out.
Mm.
Well, we want to give you the last couple minutes, Eric, to close us out here. We've got two really questions, if you want to call them both questions. One of them is, the other one's really not. But what else do you want to say about Lasell University? Anything that you want to bring up, anything that you want to let the audience know that you felt was important? Maybe it's something that we didn't get to. Start there, and then go ahead. Start there.
Go on, please.
I was just going to say, and then wrap up with what you see as the future of higher education.
Sure. Well, I don't know what else I would say about Lasell other than that we have been focused on value for some time. And I don't mean just value from an economic standpoint. You know, we implemented a tuition reduction 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And the idea there was to get the cost of a college education more in line, the price of it more in line with the cost of it. And the other idea there was recognition that 60% of prospective students don't look at an institution beyond its sticker price.
Mm-hmm.
So we know we have a lot to offer. And if price was one of the things that was preventing you from taking a look at us, let's lower the price so you'll at least look at us, and we know we'll enroll our share of people. So we've been interested in value, not just from an economic standpoint, that's one way we've been interested in it, but also in terms of the value of our academic programs. As I described to you, we have an internationally known fashion program. We have one of two accredited undergraduate forensic science programs in New England.
Wow.
We have award-winning communication programs and activities, our business, our psychology programs, all geared toward people getting jobs and doing well. So that's value. We think our on-campus as well as our off-campus experience, the quality of the experience is of great value to our students. And that's borne out in our alumni surveys and their performance. So, those are things that I would say about Lasell, that we're here to be transformational for our students. We're here for our students to come out and to learn how to be career ready and to come out and get jobs. And that's what we do. So that's important. And we're interested in teaching across the lifespan, as I've described before. The second part of that was, I guess, what
you see for the future.
For the future of higher ed, I think a lot of it goes back to, frankly, what I said before. I think for higher ed, we're going to be, one, a lot more nimble. We have to be. Two, I think we're going to be a lot more democratic, if you will, in what we provide and how we provide to people. Democratic in that it's going to be able for many to utilize and to benefit from what we have to offer. And so it's not just the traditional students, but it's going to be a lot of other folks. It already is a lot of other folks. And we're going to continue to do that. And as I said, what better segment of society to do it than higher education? We've got a lot of big minds. We need to wrap those big minds around the problems of society.
Well said. Brent, what'd you think of this? It's refreshing, yeah?
Extremely refreshing. I love that Eric sees the world that way, because what it does, it pretty much says, hey, if higher education thinks that way, then access to pathways that ensures that futures will be successful, it will be there.
Well, there you have it, everybody. Another, I would say, dare I say, successful episode of the EdUp Experience podcast. First with my guest co-host. Here he is. On the outro, Brent Ramsden, CEO of Education Dynamics. Brent, it's always a pleasure to have you here, my friend. You ask triple-barreled questions, and I love them.
Sorry. I always get way too excited when I get someone like Eric on, and I know his background, and I have 10 questions in my head. So apologies about that, Eric, but it was an absolute pleasure spending time with you today.
Thank you both. I had a great time.
Here he is, everybody. He's your guest today. He is Eric Turner. He's president at Lasell University, and you just EdUp'd.
Attention, higher leaders. It's time to shake up your marketing and enrollment strategy. Join us at Insights EDU, February 17th to the 19th, 2026 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for a beachfront experience and the best higher education marketing and enrollment management conference. Early bird pricing ends December 15th, 2025. Register now at insightsedu.com. The future unbound is at Insights EDU 2026. EdUp Experience has brought you powerful conversations with more than 400 college presidents and higher ed leaders, over 1,000 episodes and counting. Now, we're inviting you to join us in shaping the future of higher ed podcasting. For just $5.99 a month, you lock in that rate for life, but only if you sign up before December 31st, 2025. As a supporter, you'll get ad-free early access to episodes. Prices go up after December 31st, but your rate never will. Visit edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com. Click support the show and join our community today.